Ohadayo. I'm not sure how many are watching at the moment, but we will start now. And if you are seeing this from the VOD, I hope that you'll have a pleasant time for this bedtime story read along of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami FlaVR. That's a very long name. I'm not very familiar with the sect behind this, but I do like some parts of the text and others not so much. And we'll be reading the first chapter, which is about 42 pages, followed by, I suppose, the foreword and the preface and the introduction. So that would be, yeah, around perhaps 82 pages, but I might skip some of the introduction. And then next week we'll be reading the finishing up operators and things in the schism story. The Bhagavad Gita is the best known and most frequently translated of the Vedic religious texts. Why it should be so appealing to the Western mind is an interesting question. It has drama, for its setting is a scene of two great armies, banners flying, drawn up opposite one another on the field, poised for battle. It has ambiguity, and the fact that Arjuna and his charioteer Krishna are carrying on their dialogue between the two armies suggests the indecision of Arjuna about the basic question: should he enter battle against and kill those who are friends and kinsmen? It has mystery, as Krishna demonstrates to Arjuna. His cosmic form has a properly complicated view of the way of religious life, and treats of the paths of knowledge, works, discipline, and faith, and their interrelationships, problems that have bothered adherents of other religions in other times and places. Of is a deliberate means of religious satisfaction, not a mere outpouring of poetic emotion. Next to the Bhagavad Purana, along works of South India, the Gita is the text most frequently quoted in the philosophical writings of the Gaudiya Vaishnava school. The school represented by Swami Bhakti Vedanta is the latest in a long succession of teachers. It can be said that this school of Vaishnavism was founded or revived by Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, there will be many mispronunciations. In 1486 to 1533, in Bengal, and that is currently the strongest single religious force in the eastern part of the Indian subcontinent, the Gaudiya Vaishnava school, for whom Krishna is himself the supreme God, and not merely an incarnation of another deity, sees Bhakti as an immediate and powerful religious force, consisting of the love between man and God. Its discipline consists of devoting all one's actions to the deity, and one listens to the stories of Krishna from the sacred texts. One chants Krishna's name, washes, bathes, and endorses the mercy of Krishna, feeds him, and takes the remains of the food offered to him, thus absorbing his grace. One does these things and many more until one has been changed. The devotee has become transformed into one close to Krishna and sees the Lord face to face. From this point of view, the Swami comments that this is more legitimate, how a devotee of Krishna interprets his own text. And I'm going to paraphrase this so we can get to the first chapter a little bit more quickly. Okay, so this professor is done with his prologue, and now for the preface. Originally, I wrote Bhagavad Gita as it is in the form in which it is presented now. When this book was first published, the original manuscript was unfortunately cut short to less than 400 pages, without illustrations and without explanations for most of the original verses of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In all of my other books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Upanishad, etc., the system in this that I give the original verse is English transliteration, word for word Sanskrit English equivalents, translations, and purports. So the author is thorough in all methods of translation. This makes the book very authentic and scholarly and makes the meaning self-evident. I was not very happy, therefore, when I had to minimize my original transcript. But later on, when the demand for Bhagavad Gita as it is considerably increased, I was requested by many scholars and devotees to present the book in its original form, and Messrs. Macmillan and Co. agreed to publish a complete edition. Thus, the present attempt is to offer the original manuscript of this great book of knowledge with full parampara explanation. Now they talk more about the Krishna consciousness movement, which is still big in the 60s and 70s. But there has been their style is still a lot of 60s. So it hasn't really been updated, even though it was an update to the previous Krishna movements in the 19th century. And I might share my thoughts more on that a little later. Krishna consciousness in Los Angeles. I have tried to present Bhagavad Gita as it is without adulteration. Before my presentation, all English editions were introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition. Our business is to present the will of Krishna, not mundane speculators like politicians, philosophers, or scientists. Unlike the so-called scholars, do not see that Krishna is in a spirit or different. Krishna is absolute, and there's no difference between his name, Krishna's forms, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, etc. This absolute position of Krishna is difficult to understand for any person who is a non-devotee, so a layperson, in the Parampara disciplic succession system. Generally, the so-called scholars, politicians, philosophers, Swamis without proof of knowledge of Krishna try to banish or kill Krishna when writing commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And there'll be more individualism things that I like later on in the text that alliterates to what we're talking about here. Such unauthorized commentary is known as Mayavadi Vaisya, warned us about these men. It can be wrote this is more talking about his movement. If even one man becomes a pure devotee, we should consider our attempt a success. Oh yeah, and then there's a personality test in the middle of the book. Which of the 4 types of non-pure devotees are you, or a pure devotee, or the 4 who reject? And a very funny picture about that. You know what? I'll just skip to it right now. Where is it? 935. Not this one. Oh yeah, here. 934. So there's Krishna and the 4 types of pure devotees, and then the 4 types of non-pure devotees. It's one of my favorite images of the book. It has quite a character to it. More context to be provided later. Alright, now what page were we on? I'll try page 11. Oh yes, here we go. Introduction. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisance unto him, when was established within this material world. The mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet. I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Okay, the friend of the distressed. This is a prayer of introduction. We cannot take the medicine according to our whim or the direction of the friend. It must be taken according to the directions given. The speaker of the Bhagavad Gita is Lord Sri Krishna. He is mentioned on every page as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or demigod. In this text, the author uses the term demigod to refer to, say, elemental gods or minor gods. So Indra or Zeus would be considered a demigod by this system, whereas the all-powerful supreme god, or Krishna, would be the higher god. And the higher gods in this book live on the heaven above heaven, and then the others live on the regular heaven. Anyways, let's continue on. The Bhagavad Gita is best understood by a person whose quality similar to Arjuna's. And as to say, he must be a devotee in direct relationship with the Lord. That is a very elaborate subject matter. A relationship, 5 types. There's devotee in a passive state, active state, as a friend, a parent, or as a conjugal lover. So Arjuna was in a relationship with the Lord as a friend. Of course, there's a gulf difference between this friendship and the friendship found in the material world. I'm going to just skim through this part because this is a bit of an introduction, but you can read this on your own time as I get to the first chapter in about 20 more pages. But if I see something no, not just commenting on that. You know, in a way, reading the introduction after reading the chapters may, be a bit more understandable, considering how heavy this is. A lot of this is quotes from the text that we'll get later. I think there's a reference to part 8. Oh yes, this is important. Arjuna said, "Oh, Madhu, so the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and undoable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady." Okay, so we all have a little bit of understanding of monks living very peaceful lives in the mountains or isolated forest huts, not hurting anyone. However, that's impractical and, well, devoid of pleasures, which Arjuna is unable to take, as are most of us. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshiping me and transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So one who thinks of the Supreme Lord always is the greatest yogi, the supermost jnani, and the greatest devotee at the same time. And so the Lord further tells Arjuna that as a Kshatriya he cannot give up his fighting, but if Arjuna fights remembering Krishna, then he will be able to remember him at the time of death. But one must be completely surrendered in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. We work not with our body actually, but with our mind and intelligence. So if the intelligence and the mind are always engaged in the thought of the Supreme Lord, then naturally the senses also engaged in his service. Superficially, at least, the activities of the senses remain the same, but the consciousness is changed. The Bhagavad Gita teaches one how to absorb the mind and intelligence in the thought of the Lord. Okay, and then processes. And the disciplics, the succession from, it looks like 32 generations up to the author. Chapter 1. Observing the armies of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. I can't read Hindu or whatever language that is, so I skipped that part. Alright. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight? Okay, so the purport. Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahamya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. Example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teachings understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Gita in that light of discipline, succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. So basically, the author says multiple times that reading this book is not enough, and that you actually have to meet with somebody who is in the discipline succession. And it is true in a networking sense that reading, like say, business books are not enough. You need to know businessmen, and I suppose the same goes for spiritual matters. If someone is fortunate enough, one will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader who also finds things that are not to be found elsewhere, that is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya. So those are the two narrators. The Indian text has multiple of these. It starts with one, the author, who is an oral poet, Vyasa, who speaks the entirety of the Mahabharata, which is a huge book in which the Bhagavad Gita is one part, and he is reciting it orally to Ganesha of the elephant head, Shiva's son. And Ganesha is the scribe. He is illiterate. He is able to read and write, so he's writing it down. So the storyteller is speaking to a scribe, or in our case, I guess it would be the Zoomer who cannot write is speaking to the AI who is transcribing his words. And then within the book, there is Dhritarashtra, who is the king, who is looking at the battlefield and asking Sanjaya, who is like a TV. He can see the entire battlefield like an eagle, but he is walking on the ground like a man. And he tells him what's going on, not unlike a sports commentator on the radio. Okay, now that there's that context, it is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So that's the big fight in the book, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharma Kshetra, a place where religious truths are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. So Lord Krishna was fighting as a charioteer on Arjuna's side. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, "What did my sons and the sons of Pandu do?" He was confident that both his sons and the sons of the younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want to compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Oh yes, context for the war. So there is several families. Near the beginning of the book, the Pandava brothers, which is one side of the royal family, conquers the entire world and gifts the world to their sovereign uncle, Dhritarashtra. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. But Dhritarashtra is blind, and half of that goes to his son, Duryodhana, who is an artificial intelligence or artificial construct created from magic mixed with an aborted fetus split into 100 parts to create 100 brothers and one sister or something. And, or was it 99 and 1? Oh yeah, and they're all demigods by the traditional method of the word. The Pandava brothers, of which Arjuna is the middle child. Let's see. And they have some sort of fighting over the kingdom. So each side of brothers versus brothers gather their armies of people they've conquered and their alliances, and they meet on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and they fight. Alright then. It is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship even for the denizens of heaven. Oh yeah, so they decide to fight on holy ground. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably. Oh yeah, and at the time, these mortal humans were stronger than gods, like, say, I believe at one time Arjuna defeated his father Indra, which would be Zeus, in battle, but he spared his life and didn't kill him. And then they became a bit more friendly than you would think. But yes, they were all very powerful according to the text. Now, okay, he knew very well this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasa, and therefore by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Vyasa is the oral poet, or the author. And so Dhritarashtra, or the recounter, the historian in this case, asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belonged to the same family. But Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed heresy. My stomach was boiling a bit because I don't think I cooked the banana cake I made enough. It was sweet when I took the bread out of the oven, and I was able to turn it into many holes. So I'm quite full on that. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. Oh yes, and Dhritarashtra is blind, and by the law, a blind king cannot be the king, so that falls to his son, the Prince Duryodhana, but Dhritarashtra is still the king, as virtue of his, politics or something, and he's also strong too. As in the paddy field of unnecessary plants are taken out, so as expected from the very beginning of these topics and the religious field of Ch1, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwatered plants like Dhritarashtra, Sandhyadhana, and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons headed by Yudhishthira, who is the elder brother of the Pandavas, would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of words Dharma, Kshetra, and Kurukshetra of both historical and Vedic importance. And I'm going to fix the fan. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that the sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding of the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage, and Sanjaya could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. He wanted, therefore, to encourage the despondent king, and thus he warned him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of this holy place. Now, let's adjust the text a little bit. Okay, there, that might be better, easier to read on mobile. Sanjaya therefore informed the king that his son, Duryodhana, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to his commander-in-chief, Dronacharya, to inform him of the real position. Oh yeah, I tweeted that picture of Duryodhana making the soy pointing thing that was illustrated like that 50 or so years ago. Although Duryodhana is mentioned as the king, well, at least that's when I think that was illustrated. He still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician, but Duryodhana's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military engagement of the Pandavas. Oh wait, the text is not... No. Yeah, there we go. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Okay, this was page 44. Now, to find the appropriate thing, that would be page 920. No, not this one. Not this one. Yeah, it was page 44. Okay, so here. He's pointing, he's making the soy jack face. He's pointing at the Beyond Chicken Burgers, in this case, the army, and the other guy is not having any of it. Dorna is just being serious. He's refusing to pog, but Duryodhana is clearly pogging at the sight of his enemies in the army. So he is definitely doing that. Now, going back to page 44. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Drupada was the general, or like vice general in the army. The actual general of the Pandava's army, died on the first day. I think Bhishma killed him, which was the general of this army. And then Drupada was like the commander, and then he got promoted, but he served until the end of the war. Anyways, Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to point out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. So Dronacharya had some political quarrel with King Drupada, falling to a party who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of this quarrel, Drupada performed a great sacrifice by which he received the benediction of having a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, and yet as a liberal Brahmana, he did not hesitate to impart all his military secrets from the son of Drupada. Dhristadyumna was entrusted to him for military education. Okay, so he has honor in this sense. Now on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Dhristadyumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who arranged for their military phalanx, having learned the art of Dronacharya. Duryodhana pointed out this mistake of Dronacharya's so that he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. So, one of the main problems with a family civil war is that people on both sides are a little hesitant to kill each other because, they know each other. So, in one sentence, Duryodhana is making some maneuvering so that the Drona does not, go easy on his people that are on the other side fighting him. Anyways, by this he wanted to point out also he should not be similarly lenient in battle against the Pandavas, who were also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna especially was his most affectionate and brilliant student. Duryodhana also warned that such leniency in the fight would lead to defeat. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. There are also great fighters like Yudhata, Virata, and Drupada. Even though Dhristadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were the cause of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. So Bhima is Arjuna's older brother. Arjuna is very skilled in weapons, and Bhima is very strong, like a Hercules type of person, and he uses weapons like trees and maces in his fists and feet. And he is a bit more wild, while Arjuna is more the archer and skilled. And Arjuna also uses spears and swords as well, I believe, but not as much. Also, all of them use bow and arrow. That's the meta of the war. So Bhima also uses his bows and arrows. And all of them must have great strength because these are bow and arrows that are very heavy. Even today, archers acquire great strength to lift and shoot bows that are strong enough to pierce through armor. Let's see, compound bows with the gears kind of alleviate that weight, but you still need. Hunting deer is very different from trying to shoot through armor and shields. Anyways, Translations. There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Duista, Ketus, Ikitana, Kasilaja, Pulijit, Kantiboja, Sevilla. Yeah, I do not remember who these people are, but if I go back into the bigger text, of which this is a small part, I may remember. Okay. There are many Hamanyu, the very powerful Damanjodi, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi, all these warriors, great chariot fighters. Now, after all these translations, the commentator AC is going to bring this all to a surmise, which I find interesting. O best of the Brahmanas, for your information, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. They are personalities like yourself, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwatthama, Karna, the son of Soma, Daddochama FlaVR, who are always victorious in battle. So, that's who they all are. Okay. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons and all are experienced in military science. As far as the others are concerned, like Jaya, Bharata, Kritavama, Salya, etc., all are determined to lay down their lives to Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above-mentioned combined strength of his friends. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Here, in an estimation of comparative strengths made by Duryodhana, he thinks the strength of his whole force is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general Bhima. Oh yeah, and these are like sub-generals, as these are huge armies. There are generals, and then of various armies, and then of the, I think there were like 8 armies on the Pandava side, or 7 armies, and then there were 10 armies on the Duryodhana side. So each one has a general, and then there's the major general. On the other hand, the forces, who's like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. And at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of battle victorious was well asserted. Now all of you must give your support to grandfather Bhishma, stating at your respective strategic points in the phalanx of the army. To put into perspective, Bhishma once fought against Parashurama, which was many people, or most of people, believe that he is one of the reincarnations of Vishnu, who is Krishna, and he fought him to a draw. So that is his strength on the battlefield. And I believe he also might have defeated a few gods along the way, but he is presented as the gods are scared of him, and he is a mortal on earth. Let's see. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they have been considered less important. So in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Deva was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. In a few sentences that at first seem pithy or just small talk, there is quite a lot of politicking going on in here that I was not aware of when I read a translated version with no commentary. But he was an old man. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that other heroes would not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Daddochama clearly felt that the victory of the Cougars depended on the presence of Bhishmadeva. He was confident of the full support of Bhishmadeva and Dronacharya on the battle because he knew that they did not even speak a word. When Arjuna's wife, Draupadi, in a helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice, or she was being forced to strip naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that all such affection would now be completely given up by them, as was customary during the gambling performances. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, like the sound of a lion, giving Daddochama joy. Okay, now we're starting to ramp up to the climax of what happens before the fight, or before the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, which compromised the entirety of his text. Okay, the grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of his heart, of his grandson Daddochama, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him up by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Daddochama that he had no chance of victory in the battle. So now I might add a commentary of my own here, say the image of Daddochama pogging earlier in the picture plate is that pogging is a sign of depression, not of joy. Anyways, he informed his depressed because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection. Indirectly, by symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Daddochama that he had no chance of victory in the battle because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. So there was a little bit of politicking in here as well, or a double meaning. After that, the conch shells, bugles, trumpets, drums, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishmadeva, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayasti Pandu Putrana Sambhaksha. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound clues of the conch shell of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated, were donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna. And this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. So, if you were to split the Mahabharata into three parts, at the end of the first part, Arjuna and his brothers are looking for a house with Krishna, and they get into a little fight with the gods. So all of the lesser gods want to save a forest. Meanwhile, the god of fire, Agni, wants to burn the forest. So naturally, Arjuna takes the side of Agni. So Arjuna and Krishna fight all of the gods who serve Indra and Indra himself, and they win. Arjuna and Krishna win, and he decides to spare the lives of the gods. And then they take the burned down forest and they force a demon to build a house for them, and it becomes a magnificent palace. So that is, we've already determined the power levels of the in the story. Arjuna has a greater power level than the minor gods, but Shiva beat Arjuna 1v1, and was not involved in the big fight. So Shiva is stronger, and then there's Krishna or Vishnu, who is maybe stronger or as strong as Shiva, but they are somewhat comparable. Now, this text makes an argument that Vishnu has a higher power level, but all of them, that's basically how the power levels of the Mahabharata goes. Then Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Pankajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devatata, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell, the Pondra. Lord Krishna is referred to as Kriskesa in this verse because he's the owner of all senses. Oh, I see. Tob is in the comments. Thank you for blessing my sneeze. And blessings upon you too. He is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalist cannot account for the senses of the living entities. Alright, so the author dislikes impersonalists. Impersonalists, later explained the text, are religious men who believe or who want to dissolve their personalities after dying and become one with the God or become one with the Godhead. Whereas the followers of this book believe that we should maintain our individuality after death. Whether that's maintaining individuality by reincarnation or by going to one of many heavens or anything. Okay, so the impersonalists, they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. Yeah, so impersonalists, so against personality. Or at least that's how I think I understand what he's saying. The Lord is situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses. I think a skunk may have farted outside my window because I'm smelling a very strong smell. The Lord is situated in the hearts, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. He directs the senses, and in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, thus his particular name of Kriskesa. I probably didn't pronounce that correctly either. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is... Okay, this is just trivia. I'll skip what the names mean. Oh yes, this time. His name is Partha Sarathi because he worked as a charioteer for his friend Arjuna. We talk about Krishna's childhood more later, and I'll refer back to more detailed explanations of the other names. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was acquired by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Oh yeah, so Yudhishthira's coronation ceremony, he he told his four brothers to go to the four corners of the earth and conquer everything. So Arjuna went north, and according to the Mahabharata, he conquered Europe. There is no records of that. However, that is what is in the some translations of the Mahabharata. So, but it also said that Arjuna stopped after seeing frozen giants of the north. So maybe he didn't conquer Scandinavia. Well, anyways, Arjuna is referred to as Daddochama in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was acquired by the king to make expenditures. Similarly, Bhima is known as Vrkodara, because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks such as killing the demon Hidimba. So the particular types of conch shell blown by different personalities, beginning with the lords who were all very encouraging of the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune, so they were predestined to lose the battle. And that was the message announced by the sons of the conch shell. So, Bhima, or Bhishma, the grandsire, blew the conch shell to cheer Duryodhana up, who was depressed and faking joy by pogging, which is a fake expression of joy. And as a response to that, Arjuna and Krishna blew their conch shells as a true expression of joy, or at least that's what I think this interpretation of the text is saying. I've never met anyone in the disciplinic succession, according to what the text says, so I'm not sure. But maybe one of us has or will meet someone in that line and to get some useful information from that. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Adanta Jaya. Okay, so this is all trivia of everybody who blew their conch shells. You know, I might get a conch shell too and blow it on auspicious days. That would be fun. I used to have a trumpet, but I think I had to sell it at some point or got lost. I don't remember. Sanjaya informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, beginning with the grandsire Bhishma down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others. Technically, Abhimanyu didn't die, he just suffered a fate worse than death. And including kings from the many states of the world, all were present and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his son. So after Abhimanyu fired the Brahma weapon, which is described a lot like an atomic bomb or nuclear weapon, he was cursed with radiation sickness or something, and but then also made him immortal, or Krishna cursed him with that. And he sometimes peers outside children's windows and smells bad and attacks people. Or at least that's how some of the local rumors have it. Also, he is apparently still alive today. So it's basically the about 5,000 years earlier than the story of Jesus and the story of the wandering Jew or the wandering Roman. That is very similar, and I would not be surprised if there are many other similar curses that happen to people or stories to tell parables. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, and thus vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. So when one team on the football field or the basketball field or the rugby field makes their cheer, and then the other team does their cheer, it's quite different to make a cheer out of fear and then to make a cheer Like, I think it's the New Zealand rugby team that has a very distinctive cheer that I guess you could search that up on YouTube, but like it's you can kind of tell at the beginning who is more likely to win by how good each side cheers as a sign of health, or when gorillas are beating their chests before getting into a fight. Yeah. When Bhishma and the others on the side of Daddochama blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned. But in this particular verse, it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrated by the Pandavas' part. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. So this is the conclusion to the first big point the author is trying to make. In that, I'm going to eat a little bit of some chocolate to soothe my throat. It seems we're about a little bit more than halfway through until the end of the first chapter, and it's been an hour. I'll let it melt in my mouth, this chocolate. O king, at that time Arjuna, the son of Pandu, was seated in his chariot, his flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows, looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra. O king, Arjuna then spoke to Ishikasa, Krishna, these words. Like, imagine if you were on the side of Daddochama and a bunch of your guys blow their conch shells to encourage you, but then the other side does the same, and now you're even more discouraged than usual. So there's a bit of a psychological warfare aspect going on there too. Purport. The battle was just about to begin. It is understood from the above statement that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened by the unexpected arrangement of military force by the Pandavas who were guided by the direct instruction of Lord Krishna of the battlefield. Okay, so where is the plate? Not this one. Yeah, here. Here are them blowing the conches. This was also in the thumbnail, so you can see they're blowing the conch shells. And also, they are surveying the battle. There was a lot of elephant warfare at the time. This is India, of course, the birthplace of elephant warfare, which were the tanks of the olden age. And we'll go back to... Where did the text go? There it is. Who were guided by the direct instructions of Lord Krishna on the battlefield. The emblem of Hanuman was on the flag of Arjuna as another sign of victory because Hanuman cooperated with Lord Rama and Ravana. In the battle between Rama and Ravana, and Lord Rama emerged victorious. Now both Rama and Hanuman were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Oh yes, another commentary, the Ramayana, which is a prequel to the Mahabharata, and it's a lot more of a traditional Indian epic, while the Mahabharata is a bit more of a deconstruction, but one that is done correctly. I read some commentary in an article that the author believed the Ramayana happens after the Mahabharata instead of before. He thought it was a sequel because the technology that demons use are a lot more advanced. But the way the book describes it is that technology degrades as time goes down, so the quality of magic and powers that people use actually lowers in quality. So, according to the lore of the mythos religion, the technology in Rama's time would be more advanced than the technology in Krishna and Arjuna's time, because Rama's time was more in the past. So that is the traditional explanation for why demons are portrayed as intelligent and using vehicles that are a lot like cars, flying saucers, or helicopters, whereas in the demons in the Mahabharata are like live in the forest, eat children. Well, they all eat children, but here they eat with their hands instead of knives and forks. Oh wait, never mind. It's only Europeans who started the knives and fork thing. Even the very rich in India eat with the hands, and there isn't really any reason not to. Eating with the hands is great. Let's see. Now both Rama and Hanuman were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Lord Krishna is Rama himself, and wherever Lord Rama is his eternal servitor, Hanuman and his eternal consort Sita, the goddess of fortune, are present. Therefore, Arjuna had no cause to fear any enemies whatsoever, and above all, the Lord of the senses, Lord Krishna, was personally present to give him direction. Thus, all good counsel was available to Arjuna in the matter of executing the battle. In such auspicious conditions arranged by the Lord for his eternal devotees were the signs of assured victory. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see who is present here, who is desirous of fighting, and with whom I must contend in this great battle attempt. Although Lord Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, out of his causeless mercy, he was engaged in the service of his friend. He never fails in his affection for his devotees, and thus he is thus herein as infallible. As a charioteer, he had to carry out the orders of Arjuna, and since he did not hesitate to do so, he is addressed as infallible. Although he had accepted, I think the text repeated itself. Oh, herein, and then this is without herein. Okay, so I wasn't just going straight. So it does repeat this and then this. Okay. Although he had accepted the position of charioteer for his devotee, his supreme position was not challenged. So he can do so-called dirty jobs, or like undercover boss. In all circumstances, he is the supreme, the Lord of the total senses. The relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He takes great pleasure in his pure devotees assuming the advantageous position of ordering him, and he does in being the giver of orders. As master, everyone is under his orders, and no one is above him to order him. But when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure, although he is the infallible master of all circumstances. As a pure devotee of law, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins and brothers, but was forced to come onto the battlefield by the obstinacy of Daddochama. He was never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation. So, from Krishna agreeing to serve as Arjuna's charioteer and take his orders when he is the master and Arjuna is his friend and follower. In this circumstances, we can see the playfulness of Krishna as a switch, as the Zoomers say. He is not always dominating, nor is he always submissive. He is a switch. So we have learned a little bit more about Krishna's or God's personality today. Therefore, he was very anxious to see who the leading persons present on the battlefield were. Although there was no question of a peacemaking endeavor on the battlefield, he wanted to see them again, and to see how much they were bent upon demanding an unwanted war. Let me see those who have come to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. It was an open secret that Duryodhana wanted to usurp the kingdom of the Pandavas by evil plans, in collaboration with his father, Dhritarashtra. Therefore, all persons who joined the side of Duryodhana must have been birds of the same feather. Arjuna wanted to see them in the battlefield before the fight was begun, just to learn who they were, but he had no intention of proposing peace negotiations with them. It was also a fact that he wanted to see them to make an estimate of the strength with which he had to face, although he was quite confident of victory because Krishna was sitting by his side. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, being thus addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. So the armies on both sides, and they go in the middle to take a look. In this verse, Arjuna is referred to as Gudakis, means sleep, and one who conquers sleep. Sleep also means ignorance, so Arjuna conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment, because that is the nature of a devotee. Either in waking or in sleep, a devotee of the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, form, quality, and pastime. Thus, a devotee of Krishna can conquer both sleep and ignorance simply by thinking of Krishna constantly. Well, in my personal life, I've found that to be true. I can wake up a little bit easier and sleep a little bit easier if I'm just thinking about Krishna instead of, I suppose, the horny thoughts or fears or anger. And a later chapter will talk about the influence of how desires turn to anger, and how both of those are traps that people can use to trick you into doing things for them, and to be wary of that, which I think is very useful in all ages, but especially this one. Now, this is called Krishna consciousness, samadhi, or as I like to call it, Krishna Dharma. Dharma is like consciousness or destiny and duty and desire. When your desire or will is the same as God's will, or you are aligned with Krishna. So as Hrishikesh, or the director of the senses and mind of every living entity, Krishna could understand Arjuna's purpose in placing the chariot in the midst of the armies. Thus he did so and spoke as follows. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the chieftains of the world, Hrishikesh, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus who are assembled here. As the super soul of all living entities, Lord Krishna could understand what was going on in the mind of Arjuna. So he is not autistic. He is empathetic. He understands what Arjuna is thinking and how he's feeling. So we have learned a little bit more about Krishna's personality. He is aware. He is compassionate, understanding, and he knows what to do. The use of the word Hrishikesa in this connection indicates that he knew everything. So he can read your heart. And the word Partha, or the son of Kanti or Partha, is also similarly significant in reference to Arjuna. So Krishna is empathetic, but he's not one of the weak-willed empaths who let other people's emotions control them. Rather, he has the empathy and can use this as a tool or a way to get closer to people, and he is a proper empath, or a fully mastered one. As a friend, he wanted to inform Arjuna that because Arjuna was the son of Pritha, the sister of his own father Vasudeva, he had agreed to be the charioteer of Arjuna. Now, what did Krishna mean when he told Arjuna to behold the Kurus? Did Arjuna want to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such things from the son of his aunt Pritha. The burn of Arjuna was thus predicated by the Lord in friendly joking. So he is willing to tell jokes in the midst of a war. And this is also something we're learning more about the personality of the Godhead, that he even takes big wars lightly. But, as we can see, he later changes to be a bit more serious in his talk, as that is what is needed. And as we should too, be light and joking when it is possible, and to be serious when it is needed. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers all present there. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bulis Rava, who were his father's contemporaries, grandfathers like Bhishma and Somadatta, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya, and maternal uncles like Salya and Sakuni, brothers like Duryodhana. Okay, I have to go back and check who Salya is because I thought that was like a nickname for Shakuni or Sakuni, so I'll have to go back and make a note for myself there. Brothers like Duryodhana, sons like Lakshmana. Wait, wasn't he like Shakuni's son? Shaila? I don't remember. Anyways, friends like Ashvatthama, well-wishers like Kritabama, etc. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends. And the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different great friends and relatives. He became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. So people who have many educational degrees or educational discoveries, people who are very cultured and skilled, or people who are very rich, can also lack godly qualities, or they may have them. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. Now, speaking of a monk, it turns out, and this is a little bit of a comedy in the war, but, oh yes, I think I remember, Shiloh was the king of a place that said, whoever threw this feast for me, I'll fight on his side, and it turned out Duryodhana threw the feast for him when he thought it was like Krishna who did it or Arjuna, so he was kind of politically expected to fight on Duryodhana's side after saying that. But he served as a Krishna spy. He was Karna's charioteer, who was the third general, and he whispered a lot of passive-aggressive things to Karna, which made him depressed and lowered Karna's mental state and fighting ability. And then the really funny part is that Shaila, I believe, became, if that is who I'm thinking of, the fourth general after Arjuna defeated Karna and killed him. So Shaila, which was a spy for Krishna, was now in charge of the entirety of Duryodhana's army. So he went into battle, he did his thing, and then he died. Yudhishthira, I think, killed him. So that is, he fulfilled his duty on both sides, but it's possible he just jobbed on purpose and then gave his life for the cause. Or Duryodhana possibly promoted him to general just to, have him kill off. Because that way it would be harder for him to return back to his own side or run away or anything. Anyways, so that was Among Us, ancient Indian edition. And so thinking, as far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. So if Shiloh is who I'm thinking of, he was the imposter. And so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see a fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna, although it is not mentioned here. Still, one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but that he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but due to self-heartedness, characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said therefore. Oh, I didn't know I underlined this. Anyways, so this is, Arjuna is also empathetic like Krishna. However, Arjuna lets his soft heart get the better of him in this case. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. The one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he's hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Okay, I'm not sure if I underlined that or someone else did, but it's underlined in my copy. Translation. My whole body is trembling, and my hair is standing on end. My bow, Gandiva, is slipping from my hands, and my skin is burning. So after Arjuna fought Shiva one-on-one and Shiva won, I think Shiva gave Arjuna Gandiva as a gift after Arjuna submitted to him. So I suppose if that were to be, I think the closest fight between those two would be Goku versus the jackal thing. Oh, I don't remember what his name was, but he's in the new series. He kind of looks like an Egyptian jackal, Beelzebub or something. Yeah. Anyways, there are two kinds of trembling of the body and two kinds of standing of the hair on end. Such phenomena occur either in great spiritual ecstasy or of great fear under material conditions. There is no fear in transcendental realization. Arjuna's symptoms in this situation are out of material fear, namely loss of life. This is evident from other symptoms also. He became so impatient that his famous bow Gandiva was slipping from his hands. And because his heart was burning within him, he was feeling a burning sensation of the skin. All these are due to a material conception of life. So, Gandiva, you'll have to estimate, in order to shoot very far at the time, the science of weapons had to make the bows very heavy, so it's possible it was a 100-pound bow, and to draw it back and maybe 200 pounds or more, so that's a lot of muscle power needed to hold and shoot accurately with bows like that, and especially if you're rapid-firing arrows like the experts did here. Translation. I'm now unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Cassidy. Due to his impatience, Arjuna was unable to stay on the battlefield, and he was forgetting himself on account of the weakness of his mind. Excessive attachment for material things puts a man in a bewildering condition of existence. By D.V.T. Abhyanivasata. Such fearfulness and loss of mental equilibrium take place in persons who are too affected by material conditions. Arjuna envisioned only unhappiness in the battlefield. He would not be happy even by gaining victory over the foe. the word nimitta is significant. When a man sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? Everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. Arjuna is supposed to show disregard for self-interest by submission to the will of Krishna, who is everyone's real self-interest. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains. Arjuna thought that his victory in the battle would only be a cause of lamentation for him. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsman in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. Without knowing that one's self-interest is in Krishna or Krishna, conditioned souls are attracted by bodily relationships, hoping to be happy in such situations. Under delusion, they forget that Krishna is also the cause of material happiness. Arjuna appears to have even forgotten the moral codes for a Kshatriya. It is said that two kinds of men, namely the Kshatriya who dies directly in front of the battlefield under Krishna's personal orders, and the person in the renounced order of life who is absolutely devoted to spiritual culture, are eligible to enter into the sun glow, which is so powerful and dazzling. So basically, the Indian warrior class, the Kshatriya, had their own version of the Vikings' Valhalla, almost like word for word. And I'm sure many other cultures have their own Kshatriya stuff. However, because it was a multifaceted society, they had, so if the Vikings die in battle, they go to Valhalla, or here, if the Kshatriya dies in battle, he goes to the heavens. But if he lives and then dies of old age, he could also attain the same heaven, but it's a little bit harder depending on his moral qualities and how good of a warrior he was. Whereas if you just die, then, and if you are not Kshatriya, but you die in a fight, that you may not enter into the same abodes. So there's a bit of the case system controversies going there. However, later in the book there is and even in the Mahabharata, there is the argument for people who have the temperament of a different caste being born into another different case, like somebody who has the temperament for art, or a merchant being born in a Brahmana case, or an untouchable having a lot of fighting power who is Kshatriya in temperament. So that is an argument for social changing, or social mobility, and there's many arguments for social mobility throughout the epic, such as Karna's treatment and him deciding to side with the villain Daddochama after the heroes mistreat him as a result of his perceived social case. So there is commentary on social issues as well. Arjuna is reluctant even to kill his enemies, let alone his relatives. The person in the renounced order of life who is absolutely devoted, so here they're talking about the Kshatriya who dies in battle, and then the monk who renounces all pleasures and devoted to spiritual culture. Those are the two main tickets to heaven in this, or the desire of heaven, which is also a desire in this script. He felt that by killing his kinsman there would be no happiness in life, and therefore he was not willing to fight. Just a person who does not feel hungry is not inclined to cook. He has now decided to go into the forest and live a secluded life in frustration, but as a Kshatriya he requires a kingdom for his subsistence, because the Kshatriyas cannot engage themselves in any other occupation. This is by temperament and also by duty, Kshatriya, like for example, Arjuna did occupation as a hairdresser or stylist for a year when he was living incognito in a kingdom, but that was a temporary occupation. But he could not do that for like the rest of his life. And he has the temperament to conquer and rule as a king or a prince. But Arjuna has had no kingdom. Arjuna's sole opportunity for gaining a kingdom lay in fighting with his cousins and brothers and reclaiming the kingdom inherited from his father, which he does not like to do. Therefore, he considers himself fit to go to the forest to live a secluded life of frustration. Now, there has been a resurgence of memes about people who want to go to the forest, who want to live in the forest far away from the city or in a farm and live in a little cabin in the woods away from everything. And those desires are commendable, for they are much greater than other worldly desires. However, is also a little bit naive. There are people who know that when people come into a great amount of money, either by inheritance or by jobs, that many of them want to live in a secluded cabin in the woods. And these people who are a little tricky, but the bad type of tricky, um, can prey on those desires and target these people either by force or by scams or by some other way. So it's like, do you think you can hide in the forest and live alone and evil won't find you? It's like this type of attitude where there's a bit of a naivety. So if you have this desire, I would say maybe you could go for it, but you should also be aware that yes, the demonic or people with demonic temperaments will target you, and you need to know how to defend yourself, or in some cases, strike first and do so in a legal way that affords you a peace of lifestyle. And be very careful people promising you secluded forest life, which is very difficult in the modern world. I believe a lot of the old forests are now reclaimed parks. There are park rangers everywhere who maintain the forest to prevent poaching, which is a crime, and overhunting. And we're talking about poaching animals, not poaching VTubers, which is legal, even though some people don't want it to be. Oh, yes, and there was a famous hermit who wanted to live in the forest, but the forest he chose was unable to support him. It did not have enough vegetation or animal life to sustain him. So he had, in order to live his lifestyle, to break into people's houses like a thief in the night and steal their breakfast cereals, which is unfortunate, but in order to live the hermit life he wanted, he needed to steal, which is a little bit sad, but that is how he could support himself in a world where a lot of the animal life has been diminished, and so has the vegetation life. O Govinda, of what avail to us are kingdoms, happiness, or even life itself, when all those of whom we may desire them are now arrayed in the battlefield? O Madhu Suda, no. When teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-laws, grandsons, brothers-in-laws, and relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties all standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them, though I may survive, O maintainer of all creatures? It's weird. My internal body temperature is getting hotter while the environment around me is getting cooler. Might be the headset. Then why should I wish to kill them, though I may survive? O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. Purport. Arjuna has addressed Lord Krishna as Govinda because Krishna is the object of all pleasures for cows and the senses. By using this significant word, Arjuna indicates what will satisfy his senses. Although Govinda is not meant for satisfying our senses, if we try to satisfy the senses of Govinda, then automatically our own senses are satisfied. Materially, everyone wants to satisfy his senses. He wants God to be the order supplier of such satisfaction. The Lord will satisfy the senses of the living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covet. So, satisfy your senses without overindulgence or without indulgence at all or getting greedy. But when one takes the opposite way, namely when one tries to satisfy the senses of Govinda without desiring to satisfy one's own senses, then by the grace of Govinda, all desires of the living entity are satisfied. Arjuna's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here partly due to his natural compassion for them. He is therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed in the battlefield, and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. This is a typical calculation of material life. The transcendental life is, however, different. Since a devotee wants to satisfy the desires of the Lord, he can, Lord willing, accept all kinds of opulence for the service of the Lord. And if the Lord is not willing, he should not accept a farthing. A farthing or a shilling is like a penny or a quarter, a sliver of a penny or something. Arjuna did not want to kill his relatives, and if there were any need to kill them, he desired that Krishna kill them personally. At this point, he did not know that Krishna had already killed them before their coming into the battlefield, and that he was only to become an instrument for Krishna. This fact is disclosed in following chapters. As a natural devotee of the Lord, Arjuna did not like to retaliate against his miscreant cousins and brothers, but it was the Lord's plan that they should all be killed. The devotee of the Lord does not retaliate against the wrongdoer, but the Lord does not tolerate any mischief done to the devotee by the miscreants. The Lord can excuse a person on his own account, but he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotees. Therefore the Lord was determined to kill the miscreants, although Arjuna wanted to excuse them. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore it is not proper for us, Arjuna is talking, to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? How can we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? According to Vedic injunctions, there are 6 kinds of aggressors. A poison giver. 1. 2. One who sets fire to the house. This can be literal or figurative. Both settings apply. One who attacks with deadly weapons. 3. 4. One who plunders riches. 5. One who occupies another's land. And 6. One who kidnaps a wife. Such aggressors are at once to be killed, and no sin is incurred by killing such aggressors. So there is a little bit of ancient stand your ground laws that we have learned according to Vedic injunctions. We could even synthesize moderate stand your ground laws with these if we are to make improvements in the current laws. Synthesis does not mean to take the whole thing or stack both on top of each other, but to combine and make it a better occurrence. Such killing of aggressors is quite befitting for any ordinary man, but Arjuna was not an ordinary person. He was saintly by character. and therefore he wanted to deal with them in saintliness. This kind of saintliness, however, is not for a Kshatriya. Although a responsible man in the administration of a state is required to be saintly, he should not be cowardly. For example, Lord Rama was so saintly that people were anxious to live in his kingdom. Rama Rajya. But Lord Rama never showed any cowardice. Ravana was an aggressor against Rama because he kidnapped Rama's wife Sita. But Lord Rama gave him sufficient lessons unparalleled in the history of the world. In Arjuna's case, however, one should consider the special type of aggressors, namely his own grandfather, own teacher, friends, sons, grandsons, etc. Because of them, Arjuna thought that he should not take the severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. Besides that, saintly persons are advised to forgive. Such injunctions for saintly persons are more important than any political emergency. Arjuna considered that rather than kill his own kinsmen for political reasons, it would be better to forgive them on grounds of religion and saintly behavior. He did not, therefore, consider such killing profitable simply for the matter of temporary bodily happiness. After all, kingdoms and pleasures derived thereof are not permanent, so why should he risk his life and eternal salvation by killing his own kinsmen? Arjuna's addressing of Krishna as Madhava, or the husband of the goddess of fortune, is also significant in this connection. He wanted to point out to Krishna that as husband of the goddess of fortune, he should not have to induce Arjuna to take up a matter which would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotees. Arjuna and Dharma, although these men, overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? Report. A Kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or gamble when he is so invited by some rival party. He must accept. Under such obligation, Arjuna could not refuse to fight because he was challenged by party of Daddochama. So the deal with these things is that Brahmanas in the Mahabharata cannot fight, but in exchange they advise and they are given alms and sustenance, which is charity, for their religious efforts. Kshatriyas rule the people, but they must defend, they must accept every challenge, and they must fight. And that, in return, they get lordship and kingship over the common men. And I suppose Vaishyas, which are the merchant class, must sell. They can't refuse sale. Or I think it doesn't really talk about Vaishyas in the Mahabharata. It's mostly on Kshatriyas. And then there is, of course, Drona Karya, who is Brahmana, who fights. And there is a little bit of a lecture about him in the Mahabharata and the ethics of having such a powerful, godly man on the battlefield, using his religious powers to kill people. Under such obligation, Arjuna could not refuse to fight. In this connection, Arjuna considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of such a challenge. Arjuna, however, could see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. Considering all these pros and cons, Arjuna decided not to fight. With the destruction of dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligious practice. In the system of the Varna-Slava institution, there are many principles of religious traditions to help members of the family grow properly and attain spiritual values. The elder members are responsible for such purifying processes in the family, beginning from birth to death. But on the death of the elder members, such family traditions of purification may stop, and the remaining younger family members may develop irreligious habits and thereby lose their chance for spiritual salvation. So, after the greatest generation and the silent generation and the lost generation all up and died, and the boomers were experimenting with stuff, a lot of habits were lost to the family as well as a lot of money lost to various families. And irreligious habits have sprung up everywhere, and also other religious habits, but ones who are quite bad. And this is what has occurred on a massive scale ever since the beginning of the 20th century, or perhaps the middle of the 19th century with the world wars. So many who are now in the position of the elder, um, which is Generation X, do not know what the traditions are, or do not know how to soothe the family when they develop bouts or moods of schizophrenia, psychopathy, autism, bipolarism, or other maladies. So we must, our work is to rediscover such things, or perhaps invent new methods. And there have been people who have been making much progress in that. Blessings onto their efforts. Therefore, for no purpose should the oldest members of the family be slain. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. So, bastards. Good population in human society is the basic principle of peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. The Varna Srama religion's principles were so designed that the good population would prevail in society for the general spiritual progress of state and community. Such population depends on the chastity and faithfulness of its womanhood, as children are very prone to be misled. Women are similarly very prone to degradation. Therefore, both children and women require protection by the elder members of the family. By being engaged in various religious practices, a woman will not be misled into adultery. Okay, so this is the commentary that the author is making here. At this point, with a lot of religious shackles being broken off, I don't really see that happening anytime soon. If anything is going to occur to improve situations, it may have to be something new rather than a return to the past, like an update instead of a reversion. But we may get into that topic later. According to Kanakya, Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. So, okay, the author's comments are a little bit outdated because I've known many intelligent women who have tricked many seemingly intelligent men, and I've watched it happen, sometimes while drinking coffee. So the different family traditions and religious activities should always engage them. The chastity and devotion will give birth to a good population eligible participating in the Sarama system. On the failure of such, naturally the woman becomes free to act and mix with men. Thus adulteries indulged in at the risk of unwanted population. Irresponsible men also provoke adultery in society, thus the wanted children for the human race at the risk of war and pestilence. So people's desires uh, go haywire, and the author is suggesting religious restraint, which is one solution. Translation: when there is increase of unwanted population, a hellish situation is created for both the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. In such corrupt families, there is no offering of oblations of food and water to the ancestors. So, oblations of food and water is like you go to the shrine of your dead relatives, either in your house with a picture, like you might have seen that in anime with the incense burning, and you leave a fruit there, or that's cut in half, or you do the same but at a gravestone, and you take cleaning supplies and you scrape the moss off the gravestone and wash it. Um, that has decreased, I've noticed, as a thing people do. Um, and leaving food there, maybe a squirrel will eat it, or or it might rot, but or sometimes what is believed is the spirit of the ancestor, or the dead relative will come and eat the fruit, or it is a sort of a sustenance thing. So it is a little sad that this is not. We tend to avoid the dead, and we don't really keep it in our minds unless it's Cinco de Mayo. Purport. According to the rules and regulations of food activities, there is a need to offer periodical food and water to the forefathers of the family. This offering is performed by worship of Vishnu, because eating remnant of food offered to Vishnu can deliver one from all kinds of sinful actions. Sometimes the forefathers may be suffering from various types of sinful reactions, and sometimes some of them cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in subtle bodies as ghosts. So in this case, a subtle body is a ghost or a spirit um, that you cannot really interact with objects, but can kind of go through them. And the physical body is like a coat that you wear over the subtle body and you use to interact with the world. At least that's how I understand the explanation of physical and then subtle bodies. Thus, when remnants of prasadam food are offered to forefathers by descendants, the forefathers are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. Such help rendered to forefathers is a family tradition, and those who are not in devotional life are required to perform such rituals. One who is engaged in the devotional life is not required to perform such actions. So if you are devotional into Krishna consciousness, you don't need to do these actions according to the author of the book. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of misery. It is stated in the Bhagavatam, anyone who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligations, has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. So if you take up a relationship with God or Krishna that is bound by love, then you are free from all other oaths. It is like a general fleeing, or by choosing one path, all the oaths are broken from all the other paths. But you are not like in a state where, say, regular oath breakers are, where they also break their good fortune oaths and are subject to all sorts of curses, or like it's free real estate for demonic possession. So you should be very careful when speaking or dealing with any oath breaking things, because it can remove your, say, spiritual antivirus, anti malware. And but in this case, you are maintaining one very strong oath to Krishna, which is God, and in this case, the other oaths, which are much weaker, fall apart. Due to the evil deeds of the destroyers of family tradition, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. The four orders of human society, combined with family welfare activities as they are set forth by institution of Sanatana Dharma or Varnasrama Dharma, are designed to enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. For the breaking of Sanatana Dharma tradition by irresponsible leaders of society brings about chaos in that society. Consequently, people forget the aim of life, Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such leaders are sure to be led into chaos. I lost a thought, but I wanted to say something. What was it again? Oh, the thought might come later. I might tweet it out if I think about it. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplined succession, those who destroy family traditions dwell always in hell. Oh yes, so in the modern world, the father or the mother has one job, and then the father or the mother takes care of the home. Meanwhile, the children are sent to school. The grandparents are sent to their retirement home, or they are at home, or a different house, and all the relatives live far apart. So already the family has been broken in many cases, or in sometimes a family that remains together in the same household is quite chaotic, for they are not there by choice, but rather they are all together by financial means, or poverty, or perhaps weakness in one member of the family who cannot do much without the other's help. So in this case, a lot of families that are remaining together are in some ways very flawed, while others who are going elsewhere who are separated or weak without the support of a strong family, and in competitions, whether in business or war or athletic or art competitions, the people with strong family support often win, while those who lack a family support structure or social support structure find themselves losing to the vagaries of life. Like Duryodhana said earlier, the Bhishma is strong, but he needs people to protect his flanks and his back. And in this case, a lot of us do not have such a thing, which is one of the great things about an agency like FlaVR. You get all sorts of people to support your wings and your back. But boy, Arjuna bases his argument not on his own personal experience, but on what he has heard from the authorities. That is the way of receiving real knowledge. One cannot reach the real point of factual knowledge without being helped by the right person who is already established in that knowledge. So, if you know people who are strong and fit, you are more likely to become strong and fit. If you know people who are rich, the more rich people you know personally, the more likely you are to become rich or to be rich. And the people, the more spiritual, or if you know the right spiritual person, is more likely that you will help you become more holy or better to control the senses, less likely to fall for bait, and more calm, have inner peace in the mind, heart, and soul. So one who is always engaged in sinful activities must utilize the process of evolution called the Gita. Not doing so will surely be transferred to hellish planets to undergo miserable lives as a result of sinful activities. There is a system in the Varnasrama institution by which one has to undergo the process of evolution before death with sinful activities. Okay, so the author uses the term planets, while other people might say planes, or planes of existence, or dimensions of existence. But it basically is talking about after death there are like different planes or planets or dimensions, like various types of heavens and hells. Or if you would like to believe the machine elves theory that people who experiment with drugs like DMT go into other dimensions, but these creatures live very far away in space, and space travel is very expensive and not very productive, so they travel through the dimensions instead of through space. And they all live on planets, which is a potential theory. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but you'll have to be careful about a lot of these alien theories and getting too deep into that, because the more interested you are, the more you desire it, and the sensing desire is like putting a big kick me sign on your back, saying you may want to be susceptible to these alien influences. So you should be very careful about these things. And most people do not have the fortitude to look into those things, and I am one of them. So I'll stick to what I am doing here, the reading the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita as it is by Krishna and the AC God. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world, but Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles, therefore takes care to avoid such activities. I would consider it better for the sons of Daddochama to kill me unarmed and unresisting, than fight with them. It is the custom, according to Kshatriya fighting principles, that an unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. Arjuna, however, in such an enigmatic position, decided he would not fight if he were attacked by the enemy. He did not consider how much the other party was bent upon fighting. All these symptoms are due to soft-heartedness, resulting from his being a great devotee of the Lord. Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down in his chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood upon the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft-hearted person, in the devotional service of the Lord, is fit to receive self-knowledge. So in this case, Arjuna is pure good, but he's allowing his desires to control him. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purports the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, matter observing the armies on the battlefield of the Kurukshetra. Chapter 2. Okay, so we'll stop here for chapter 2. It's been 2 hours. I hope everyone enjoyed the stream, or if you're on the VOD, I hope you can take your time, and it is possible to go back and look at the commentaries and think for yourself in the comments and take what is useful to you. However, be warned that this is a full system, and simply applying a little bit here and there may have not the best results. So with this, my head is empty of thoughts and my voice is tired, and I will end the